Deadly storms that raked Oklahoma last year underscored the state's location in the middle of what's known as Tornado Alley. 79 twisters were reported in Oklahoma in 2013, ranking the state second in the nation for the largest number of tornadoes. This week, weather experts from around the nation gathered in Oklahoma City for the third annual Tornado Summit, sharing information about how to better prepare for the next tornado outbreak.
Residents of Moore know firsthand how destructive an EF5 tornado can be. The deadly twister that ripped across Moore and South Oklahoma City last May killed 25 people, including 7 children at Plaza Towers Elementary School. As she welcomed the experts from 24 states who gathered at Oklahoma City's Cox Center for this year's Tornado Summit, Governor Mary Fallin recalled the efforts of rescue workers as they dug through the piles of rubble.
I can still remember the hammering of the concrete, the welding, sparks flying as they were welding through steel, trying to get down underneath the rubble itself to see if there might be one last person that hadn't been found.
While the devastation was catastrophic, Fallin says there are lessons to be learned from the disaster.
As far as getting the message out, the weather's severe, recovery efforts, the coordination of services, and having a collaborative team approach is really essential anytime you have any type of major catastrophe.
The loss of life at Plaza Towers has intensified efforts to protect school children when the weather turns severe. Rick Smith is the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Norman. Smith and meteorologist Harold Brooks with the National Severe Storms Lab spent the past year assessing tornado preparedness and safety at schools in Norman. Smith says from a historical perspective, tornadoes during school hours are rare in Oklahoma.
Most of the tornadoes in Oklahoma happen after 3 o'clock, maybe 4 to 9 p.m. So it's unusual to have a school impacted during school hours. May 20th was a tragic kind of an outlier to that statistic. But they can happen. They can happen at any time of the day or night. They can happen any time the ingredients are coming together. But we're also very concerned about those after-school activities. That's the most likely time for a school to be impacted by a tornado if it's going to happen. So your graduation ceremonies, your band concerts, your football games, baseball games, a lot of times there's no one monitoring the weather for those events.
Smith says preparation is the key to better protecting students, which means making sure someone at the school is keeping an eye on weather conditions.
One of the things we continue to do is to promote that schools have multiple sources of information, that they're monitoring the weather. Obviously, those May tornadoes were well forecast with outlooks and watches and warnings. So we're encouraging schools to get plugged into that information system.
Schools also need to have a plan of action and a place for students to go in the event of tornadoes.
We're not going to put storm shelters in schools before March or April of this year, not all the schools. You have to deal with what you have and use the best available refuge that you have. Keep in mind that hallway may not be the best. There's nothing magically safe about a hallway.
Brooks concedes finding a safe spot can be a challenge.
If we're honest, when schools are designed, they aren't designed necessarily with safety as one of the key things. I mean, you're designing the school so that the kids will be in a learning environment they like being in. You know, if we build it as essentially a fortress, there are issues.
The Oklahoma Emergency Management Agency is working with schools to assess their needs. Emergency Management Director Albert Ashwood says they've launched the Safe Schools 101 initiative in conjunction with the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
We're taking requests from the different school districts if they'd like us to come out and assess their buildings and see what their best area of refuge is right now for a safe room or shelter. And if they were to do a safe room or shelter, where would they do it? Would it be a retrofit? Would it be new construction? Give them some options and opportunities that they can think about with their local architect.
Ashwood says the Oklahoma Emergency Management Agency and FEMA are in the process of establishing a baseline of schools' needs.
The truth of the matter is that we have 517 districts. We have roughly 1,800 school buildings. Some of them have safe rooms in them. They didn't talk to the government or take government money. They did it themselves at the local level. The problem with the school safe room program of any kind when you have money is which one do you do first? So you really need that baseline assessment to make sure we know where we are and who needs it quickly.
Neither Plaza Towers nor the nearby Briarwood Elementary School had safe rooms or shelters when the tornadoes hit last May. That may be changing for schools constructed beyond next year. The 2015 International Building Code will require safe rooms in schools and other public buildings located in high tornado hazard areas. U.S. Representative Randy Nagebauer is also sponsoring legislation at the federal level to reauthorize the National Windstorm Impact Reduction Act. House Bill 1786 calls for improving building codes and construction standards for public and private buildings and homes. One idea often suggested since the May 20th outbreak is the idea of having tornado days, where schools would be closed when there's a risk of tornado activity. Smith is concerned that keeping children at home may put them at increased risk, noting that 55 homes near Plaza Towers suffered damage consistent with an EF4 tornado, and 5 more had EF5 damage.
The bottom line, the question that we should be asking is, would the children be safer at home? If we close schools and children are home that day, are they going to be in any better position there than they would be at school on that particular day? I don't have the answer to that question, but that's something we need to think about.
Smith believes canceling school on a tornado day isn't the same as having a snow day when the issue is keeping buses off slick roads.
At school, they have someone taking care of them. They have teachers. They have hopefully a designated area of refuge. They have ways to get weather information if all this is working like it's supposed to. But again, this is just something to think about. As we go into spring, we start having these discussions about closing schools. I don't think you can directly transfer a snow day over to tornado days and have it, make sense.
While the debate continues over how best to protect students, Smith says ultimately, everyone needs to take shelter when a tornado warning is issued.
Chances of you being hit by a tornado are exceptionally rare, but it can happen. And just because it happened last year doesn't mean it's not going to happen this year. It could be another 50 years before we see a tornado like that. The bottom line is, though, it will happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when.